What's up, you guys? We're back again with another project video. Today we're going to take this old flat mill file that doesn't cut anymore, and we're going to cut off a section and turn this into a Bushcraft knife. We're going to be using this and a leftover piece of split wood from a previous project. And yeah, let's get started. Got it clamped down to the table before I start laying out any marks for the blade shape. I'm going to clean off majority of the rust and get this down to some clean metal. We're going to be using a 4.5 inch angle grinder with a grinding disc. Get that tightened down good. We have two grinding discs out. One is going to have our grinding wheel, and the second one is going to have a sanding disc for more of the finishing work. We'll plug that one in as well. Now that I have the flats for the most part cleaned of rust, I just have some pitting kind of on there. I'm going to start working on the tang portion, cleaning off the rust on that. And I want to take the angle grinder, and instead of having these gradual curves right here, I want to cut in on each side just a little bit, but square it off so that when we press this tang into the handle material, it's a nice transition from the blade of the knife into the handle material. Now for these two sides of the tang, I roughed it out with the angle grinder. Now I'm going to take a mill file and just square them off the best I can. We're going to try to make this blade without annealing it. Most of the time when you're doing work on making blades out of files or other tools, is you're going to have to heat this up to a critical temperature and then let it cool down slowly so that this material becomes soft enough to work, and then you'll have to re-harden it and heat treat it after you're done doing the shaping of the material. But we're going to see if we can get away with doing some grinding for the edge work and then quenching it in water, or keeping it cool in water, so that we don't lose the hardness of this file. Give you guys better look. Now I'm going to take a Sharpie and mark out the blade shape. So we cleaned this file up around, from the tang, around 3 inches up, and that's where we're going to cut. So I'm thinking if we keep it close to a 3-inch blade and then draw around a 45 for the tip of the knife, and then we will put a cutoff wheel on the 4.5 inch angle grinder and remove this knife portion from the rest of the file. We'll use the rest of this for a future project. As we're using the angle grinder, if we start seeing tempering colors like the straw, brown, blue, purple, we're getting it way too hot. So as we're using the angle grinder to cut and remove material, we need to make sure that we're dunking it in water so we do not get up to those temperatures. Otherwise, we'll have to go through the whole entire heat treating process. Now that we got that cut, we're going to go back to the the grinding wheel and start shaping the blade. You'll want to keep the grinding from both sides for this edge as centered as possible. So I'm going to take a Sharpie, color the side that we're going to be grinding our edge onto. I'm going to take our scratch awl that we made from elk antler, get it in the middle, and then I'm going to scribe a line all the way down, just like that, and we will grind to that line from both sides. Figured this was going to happen, but as we're grinding and this edge is getting so thin that it's near impossible to even do any grinding work without getting it too hot and those tempering colors starting to show up. So we're just gonna have to end up doing this old-fashioned way. I'm gonna use the grinder, grind to that line we marked with the scratch awl, and then we will heat treat the blade, and I'll show you guys how to do that. We now have the edge ground pretty dang close, not all the way sharp, but a little tiny bit of a blunt edge. Now I'm going to get out the torch. We'll get this up to critical temperature to where a magnet no longer sticks. Then we will dunk it in water. To heat up the blade, you can use a forge. You can probably even get away with a MAP gas torch if your material is thin enough. But this is what I have. I don't have my forge set up right now. That'll be in the future. So this is what I'll use. So as you can see right now, this sticks to the magnet. We're going to put this in the vise, heat up the blade until it's a dull orange. Make sure it doesn't stick to this magnet, and then we will come over here and dunk it in the water and swirl. Getting up to critical temperature. Just about there. I got to make this quick. Just like that. Okay, now to test to make sure it's hard enough, like I said, we're going to take a file. Yep, it skates off the metal. It is not grabbing whatsoever. So now we're going to clean it up to where we can see tempering colors, and we will move to that. Now that we have the metal cleaned up, it's nice and shiny, we're going to start tempering the blade. Now we're not going to use the rosebud on the torch for this portion because it gets way too hot too quick. So we're going to be using this hand torch, and I'm hoping I'm at an angle to where you guys can see what's going on, but I'm going to get this going slowly, just feather the heat onto the spine until I start getting a brown, a straw to brown color, maybe a little bit of blue, and then as soon as I start getting those colors and they creep up to the edge of the blade, I'm then going to dunk it in the water. Okay. Try and get coloring. Blues, that's as good as it's going to get. So we have more blues right here in the center, kind of like the belly of the knife. Browns up here at the tip. Some straw colors at the plunge line. But this will work. We will now work on finishing up the blade. This is the part of the project where we're going to go from using power tools to now we're going to just have a block of wood with some 80 grit sandpaper. Start working on cleaning up the blade. Okay, we got that side cleaned up for the most part. Now we're going to flip it over to the other side and start working on that. I'm not worrying about the tang too much. That's going to be epoxied into a wooden handle, so I'm just going to focus on the blade. Both sides of this blade cleaned up to where we want. Now I'm going to put this aside and start working on the handle material. A little bit deeper. It's sitting about where I want. Now I'm going to remove the blade, take a box cutter, and do some rough shaping on this piece before I epoxy the blade into this handle. Have the handle shaped where we want it. Now I'm going to get some 100 grit sandpaper and start sanding this down all the way around. There's a little low spot right here where it looks like a knot had ripped out when I was splitting this during the last project, but I'm just gonna keep that there. It'll give this project more character. All right, now we're gonna mix up some 5-minute epoxy. We finished sanding the handle. We're gonna epoxy the blade into the handle material. Nice. Put all that into the plastic portion of the package. Take a little stick, mix it up good. I'm gonna pull the knife out. Start filling up the hole with epoxy. Let's try that. Okay, that looks good. Now we're going to clean off the excess. We have the blade epoxied into the handle. We'll dip that into the boiled linseed oil and let that soak for a bit. We have that boiled linseed oil wiped off the handle. Now we're going to work on a really simple PVC sheath. I hope you guys like this. It's a pretty good idea. I will show you how to go about doing that now. We're going to be fire forming this PVC. We will put a portion in the vise, cut it off so it's more manageable to work with. A little bit longer. So it's better to cut more than you need than not enough, because then you just have to redo it. Remove that. We will now go straight down the middle of this coupling section on this end. We will take that cut down to where there's about 1 inch left of this expanded side of the PVC before it narrows down to its dimensional size. Now we will meet up those two cut lines right there, a little farther on that side. Now we're going to take some sandpaper and clean up these rough edges. Alright, that looks good. Any lettering that's going to be on the pipe, you want to sand that off and go in the direction that the pipe is running, because when we use the MAP gas torch to heat this up and form it around our blade, it'll give it like a wood grain look, as long as we go in the direction that the PVC is running. Now that we have the PVC sanded, we're going to take the torch and heat up this section of the pipe. Once it's malleable enough and soft, we will then take the knife, push it in, and form it as best we can around the knife. And to set it in place, once it's formed and we're happy with it, we'll take the knife out and dunk it in water. Okay, that looks pretty good. Kind of like that. And this tab on the back, you want to bend down like this, because that's what's going to go on the belt loop, if you can see that. Now we will dunk it in the water. So we heat up the lower section after we formed it around where the wooden handle is going to slide in. After we heat it up, we're going to insert it into the vise and apply some pressure to clamp it down, get it closer to the blade. We'll let that set up. Now we're going to hold the knife up to the sheath, see about how far the knife goes into the sheath, and go about ½ an inch past that, and we'll cut off the excess. Now for the rest, this wider portion down here at the end, we're going to use the torch and darken it up some. Make sure to burn the end, darken up this some. The top. Now we're going to dip this in water and set it. Right now that we have this sheath made out of PVC darkened up, we're going to take the sandpaper and again go lengthwise with our sanding strokes over the whole entire sheath, and we'll wipe it off, and that'll give it a bone kind of wood grain look, which is what we're going for. So if we did this properly, this will be a nice tight friction fit into the sheath, and that's not going anywhere. Perfect. Now for the last step, we will sharpen the knife, and we are finished. Now we have some fine grit sandpaper on a small little marble slab. It's flat. I'm just going to start working the edge. See how this sharpened up. Some pretty thick cardboard. Oh yeah. I really hope you guys enjoyed this project. Please like and subscribe to the channel. I'd really appreciate if you guys left a comment. Maybe some ideas for some future builds. Yeah, but thanks again, and I will see you guys on the next one.